Hi, welcome back. Let's talk about how to create a scatter plot. Yesterday we talked about line charts. Today we're going to do scatter plots, which involve setting up your data a little bit differently and visualizing some information in a different way than just a straight line tracking measurement over time. So with the scatter plot, what we do is we take a name or an organization or a person or a school, or in this case a country, which is how Data Wrapper has set up their example, and we attach two measurements to that country. In this case, Argentina is on top, and they have two big numbers there, and then on down the list through 14 countries. And if I scroll back up to the scatter plot chart, we can see the countries are each lined up on the chart, and those measurements determine where they land on this chart. In this case, what this scatter plot is measuring is internet and purchasing power for people in these countries. So we have internet speeds and, internet speeds runs along the x-axis, and then the purchasing power runs along the y-axis. So $80,000, Singapore is well above 80,000, and they have a megabyte per second internet speed rate of just over 12 here. And so this is an interesting way to lay out where people or places or countries in this case land on a chart based on two variables. So let's talk about how we set that up. What we do is we take the name of the country in column A, and then we have two more variables in B and C. So pretty straightforward setup actually before we drop into Data Wrapper. I'm going to go back to using Shaley's data coming straight from the West Coast regional standings for collegiate rodeo. And again, I don't have a CSV or a Excel spreadsheet of all this data. So if you're watching this video about how to do a scatter plot chart prior to watching the line chart data, I want to suggest highly that for any data search like this, instead of rolling through and copying data straight from the tables, you look for the person that you could contact and ask for that data in an Excel spreadsheet or any kind of spreadsheet or any format that's not just copying straight from a table online. In this case, I'd see Sarah Neely and I would send her an email. And of course, I would send her an email well before I needed to build this chart or have if I had a deadline. I would definitely want to be in charge or in touch with her well in advance so that I could hopefully get that data and not have to copy myself. However, I'm going to do just that right now, copy it myself. And that is because I see standings as of May 8th. So for this example, I've decided to take the men's all-around standings up to May 8th, and I'm going to compare them. In this case, Will James Sintoni from Cuesta College is in first place. And what I'm wondering here is there a correlation between men's all-around score and another event, perhaps, that those contestants excel at? And I can see in saddle rock riding, Will James Sintoni is up there again. Bareback riding, I don't see him. Bull riding, I do see him. Tie-down roping, I don't see him yet. But steer wrestling, I do see him here. And the other name I see up here is Brushtondale Minton. And Brushtondale Minton, if you look closely at the men's all-around, is in second place. So that's actually the first event where I saw both of them. So what I want to do is actually compare using those two numbers, so the total points and then the steer wrestling, and see where those land on a scatterplot chart. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to copy this information, and I'm going to paste it into my spreadsheet. Today I'm using, again, the Google spreadsheet called Sheets. And if you recall from yesterday's tutorial, this makes it very easy to import this data directly into Data Wrapper and updates and handle updates through Data Wrapper. So again, that's a good tool to use, or you can use Excel or any other spreadsheet if you wish. So I've pasted these in. Contestant, college abbreviation, total points. And what am I going to do? I'm going to think about how I need to get the next round of data in and then set up my chart so that Data Wrapper will want to work with me on this. First of all, I need to get rid of I don't need places. I know that's going to land in there, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to delete this column and get rid of that. I don't really need the college abbreviation. However, I really do like to associate a college, especially in a collegiate competition, with the name. So what I'm going to do in this case is copy the Cuesta And I'm just going to add that to Will, James, and Tony by doing this. And this is a sort of a repetitious drill, but I like to do this, so I'm going to do this. And again, this just shows how you really are in charge of your data. You're in charge of managing, manipulating, setting up, and making everything more user-friendly. And sometimes this is the process of doing it because you want to make sure that these competitors are associated with their college or their school. So I'm going to, again, just run through, copy paste these. If there were 100 of these, there's no way I'd try to do this. For 8, yes, I can do that for this example. So that's okay. So what I've done is I've copied over the schools again. All are associated now with their names. And now I can get rid of the college abbreviation column. So I'll delete that column again. And again, to delete a column in a spreadsheet, I'm just right-clicking on that top of the spreadsheet. If I just right-clicked here, I would delete the cell, but not the row. So I want to just highlight the whole row, or column, and delete that column. So it's gone. So now I have college contestant and total points for, and this is for the all-around competition. But again, I want to compare that to another event. I want to tie those two numbers together to create that scatter chart, and I've already decided I'm going to do that with steer wrestling. And so I'm going to come over here and copy all of steer wrestling and paste it back in. This time I'm going to do some manual adjustment here again. So I'm going to paste it just kind of over by the side so that I can see it, but then I can move those numbers in, because what I'm going to do is sort of look at this visually and move those numbers over manually myself. So I'm going to look first for total points for Will, James, and I'm going to look for, and I'm going to paste in steer wrestling here, and so I can name that column steer wrestling. So that's my steer wrestling column of points. So, and I cruise down here and I see it's in column, he's 11th with 177, so I'm going to just paste in 177 points. Brushton Dale is, I know, on the top. He has 1,200, over 1,200, so that's a significant event for him. Sterling Edward Humphrey is in second, also not a bad event for him. Colton Robert, there we are, 354. So you can see what I'm doing is, again, sort of some busy work. Herds, do I see Herds? No, Herds is not in there at all. That's why I don't see him. So that's okay. He's going to get a 0. I don't even have to put in that 0 because in Data Wrapper it will recognize that and create what's called a null, N-U-L-L, which essentially equals 0. So that's not going to be something I have to really worry about. Englehart, real. Englehart, is he in here? I don't see him. Okay. McWhorter. No. Bravos. No. And Green. No. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Yes, he is. There he is. Okay, so we can clearly see we're not going to have a correlation there. So these guys actually aren't going to show up in our scatter plot, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that too much. So what I'm going to do now is, because I can't drop in all of this data because that would just confuse the heck out of Data Wrapper. I just want this section that I just created. So what I'm going to do, there's a couple ways to do this, but I'm going to do it like this. I'm just going to highlight, copy, and create a new sheet. Down here at the bottom, you can always create a new sheet, which is a very important thing to know about because you don't have to open a new project or anything like that. I've just created a new sheet. And so now with this new sheet, it's automatically saved in Google Sheets. I can now grab that shareable link. Anyone can edit. I need that so that Data Wrapper can edit that. And then what I'm going to do is take this URL. I've just copied that pretty straightforward. Create a new Data Wrapper page, data page, data upload project here. I'm going to import the Google spreadsheet, paste that URL in, wait for those happy green arrows to tell me I'm ready to go. Here we go. And I'm going to check and describe that. Does it look like I wanted it to look? Aha, no, it doesn't. I already have a problem here because why am I seeing multiple columns of names and multiple red and all this stuff? So I need to go back and look at my data and see what I did. I actually know that I didn't do anything wrong by pasting this in, but what I didn't do is move this spreadsheet up the current one, the one I want to work off as the first spreadsheet. So in the first, starting on the left here. So on the first one, I see it's got all that extra data there. So I want to move sheet 8 over to be the first one. Now I can also rename sheet 8 by right-clicking and clicking rename. And in this case, I'll just go mins all around scatter. So that'll tell me what I'm working on. Mins all around scatter. The shareable link applies to all these sheets in this whole project, so I don't have to recreate a link. I just have to go back to my project. And here I was on the check and describe where I know I saw a problem. So I'm going to go back to upload data, and I'm going to refresh. Actually, it's going to automatically refresh, it looks like, because it went through that process again. I'm going to proceed. So it's refreshing again with that same link, but because the information on this Google spreadsheet has changed, Data Wrapper is updating its system. And let's proceed and see what it shows me. And so what it shows me now is exactly the spreadsheet sheet that I wanted to see here, which is several of these guys don't have numbers for steer wrestling, but they do land on the total points. So I'm ready to go. Let's visualize this and see what it looks like in a scatter plot. It's going to show me in lines here. That's not what I want to see. I want to find the scatter plot and click on that. And sure enough, I see some scatter plots plotted over a scatter plot. I see steer wrestling on the y-axis, and I see total points on the total points score. Now I need to do some annotation here and some refining and some designing, and handily Data Wrapper allows me all this with these tabs right here. So that's going to allow me to add a lot more important information to help the viewer understand it. So let's walk through refine. Refine, total points. So total points 1,500 for steer wrestling. That's okay, but I'm wondering if I'm looking at this format, and I'm wondering if I can change something to make it a little bit more understandable or cleaner. So 123K, but I'm going to go back to 0 and just start at 0 because I think that might help me clean things up. Actually, I'm looking at the x-axis, aren't I? So I'll go here down to the y-axis. I was looking at steer wrestling first, so I'll go y, and then back down to format 123, and I'll go up and change that to 0. And so those are a little bit clearer numbers in my opinion than seeing a 1K. So I've changed both of those numbers. Again, total points, if we go back to our spreadsheet, we remember total points, Will James was close to 3,000 points, as was Breston Minton, and on down to 567. So that's where we were there. And I see total points here, and I see P2, P3, P4, P9. P9, P3, P2 don't mean a lot. So I know I'm going to need to change those to attach names to those. But before I get to there, I also can't see these dots very easily. So I think I really want to adjust the size. And so all I need to come down here is to size, and I can go move that slider up. And if I move it up and let go of it, size has changed, and I can move it up even more. And then I can change it to variable. And variable applies to when I roll over it, it changes. In this case, it gives me a nice little circle around it to give me an idea of what's happening there. You can decide what you want to do based on what you want it to look like. So I'm going to, in this case, actually just leave it as a fixed size, 12:8, to make it simple. And I definitely want to include a trend line. So I'm going to click trend line. Trend line creates a line, if you recall, just like in the Data Wrapper example here. So it gives you a point of reference to say, there's a number of countries sort of above that line, and then a couple of countries, multiple countries below that line, but they don't always, and they mean different things, but a trend line helps that viewer see more clearly what's going on. Now in Data Wrapper, we have an option to see multiple kinds of trend lines, linear, and on down the list here. I like the exponential trend line because it gives me a nice sort of curvature and kind of, again, tells me who's kind of riding high and over and low, and gives me a point of reference to sort of base my visual understanding of it. Now you can do different ones. Logarithmic to me doesn't make much sense. Power, again, interesting. Cubic, very odd. Quadratic, So it's interesting to note that a lot of these lines kind of back down. They kind of go up and then they drop right back down. Well, these lines are actually exhibiting a correlation between these two numbers here, which are the number 1 and number 2. Actually, would be number 1 here and number 2 competitors based on total points going on the x-axis, of course, close to 3,000 points. But because one was so much stronger in steer wrestling than the other, it's interesting because that line will give you that difference right there. However, I'm going to take it back to exponential because that, to me, helps me see that most clearly right there. So I've gone through that first section there. Now let's annotate. And I'm going to definitely add a title. So I'm going to say men's all around. And I'm going to say correlated to, no, I'm going to say men's all around points in the West Coast region. Rodeo. Well, I'll pull the exact title here. So I'm going to go National Collegiate. I'm going to use the acronym NIRA here. And so I'm going to go find my West Coast region NIRA. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty clear what that is. And then in the description, I'm going to say, what am I actually doing here in this chart? What does this mean? It's not just all around points. It's a correlation between total points and steer wrestling points. So there you go. So nice, clear second line there. And then notes is something I don't need to add right there. Link the data source. This is a really, really good thing to do all the time if you can do this, is just grab that URL and let that viewer of yours go check it out for themselves. And that's just a tried and true way to approach building stories as a journalist or a storyteller. So you look totally upfront, straightforward, honest, and credible. So I'm going to add my name on that byline, labeling, custom tool tips, adding custom lines. So there's a lot of things. I'm going to not go through all these in this tutorial, but I urge you to play around with these. And these are good ways to, again, annotate your graph and make it easier to understand. And then I'm going to go finally to the last section, which is design. And I feel pretty good about where my graph is. However, there's one thing I'm realizing as I click through is those P's. I don't really know what P's are, and so I really want to go back and figure out how do I refine that to add names. And I'm pretty sure, where did I do this? We can do this here. Was it under steer wrestling? No. Custom colors. No. See, here I am. I'm sort of learning as we go here. Custom tool tip. Labeling, that's it, labeling. College contestant. So that column A was named, if you recall, college contestant. I'm going to go back to check that. Yep, college contestant. So that will add the names to each of my dots on the scatter plot. So, and that's a really important thing to do, because certainly if you sent this to one of those people, they would really like to see their name rather than a blue dot and a P9 next to it. So let's label college contestants. And what do we get when we do that? We give it a chance, and then I roll over that dot, and what do you know? There's the names. And if you recall, I added the college name right after the name. So Fresno, Cal Poly SLO, and West Hills. And then voila, here we go. Cuesta College, if I can get it to roll over it cleanly. Great. There's our own Will James and Tony. All right, so I think I am pretty comfortable with the way it was. Last thing I'll talk about is you can definitely resize your chart by dragging out here, and if you notice the numbers here will automatically change. If you just drag it, the chart numbers will adjust for you, so that makes it easy. Or you can certainly add the number that you would like to add. And the last thing I'll mention is the Colorblind Check, which is a really great addition to data wrappers added to their charts, which is that in truth, a lot of people don't see all the colors that we think everybody might see. So in this case, they've added several default or changes to the default setting to make sure that everybody can see here. And so I'm not going to click on these because I'm not actually Well, no, I'm gonna click on all of them actually, and so these will adjust the colors and give me colors that allow everybody to see my chart. So here we go. So as I go through this, I was thinking I could highlight all of them, but it turns out no, I have to actually pick a color, and so I'm not going to go that direction. I'm going to leave it on normal for now, but knowing I can come back if I'm going to address a certain audience that I want to make sure can see or doesn't miss out on something, I can adjust that. So you get the idea there. Okay, so clicking back through to design, and I'm good there. I can enable my social sharing, which is a very good idea. And then what do you know? I can drop it into my site just like that. Or this will allow anybody else to retweet or repost. So that's a great thing to do too. So I'm going to publish and embed that file, and it's going to send me a link, and I'm good to go. I've just created a Scatterplot chart. Okay, so it turns out it's actually not that difficult. You need to set up your data, drop it right in, and you're good, and do some annotation, but otherwise you're pretty much good to go. So have fun, build Scatterplot charts, and until the next time, take care. Until the next time, build a great chart. How's that? There you go. Okay, take care. See you soon.